Inside the hangar at Murtala Muhammad International Airport in Lagos, a tense crowd of engineers circled a massive silver jet engine resting on a wheeled maintenance stand. Red tool carts stood open like abandoned surgical tables, their contents scattered in frustration. The industrial clock on the corrugated wall ticked with unbearable loudness, each second marking another moment of expensive failure. Chief Adebayo Ogundimu, Nigeria's most successful oil and gas billionaire, checked his gold Rolex for the 15th time in an hour. His navy blue agbada, perfectly tailored and embroidered with gold thread, contrasted sharply with the grease-stained overalls and mechanics surrounding his private Bombardier Global 7500. The aircraft, worth over $70 million, sat grounded like a sleeping giant outside the hangar, its sleek white body gleaming under the harsh Nigerian sun. The engineering team, led by veteran mechanic Colonel Adelik, wiped sweat from their foreheads despite the industrial fans whirring overhead. Colonel had spent 30 years maintaining aircraft for Nigeria's elite, working on everything from government jets to oil company helicopters. His weathered hands had solved countless mechanical mysteries, but today's problem had him stumped. Security guards in crisp uniforms watched the hangar doors nervously, their eyes scanning for any unauthorized personnel. The delay was costing Chief Ogundimu millions. A crucial oil deal in Dubai awaited his presence, and every hour grounded meant potential competitors gaining advantage in the international markets. Then, cutting to the mechanical noise and frustrated muttering, a clear voice spoke from the hangar entrance. "If you permit, I will fix it." Every head snapped toward the massive sliding door where sunlight streamed in from the tarmac. A young woman stood silhouetted against the blazing afternoon light, her figure small but somehow commanding attention. She wore a faded Ankara wrapper that had seen better days, the traditional pattern barely visible through years of wear and washing. Her hair, wild from Lagos humidity and wind, framed a face that spoke of missed meals and sleepless nights on unforgiving streets. Amara Chukwu was 23 years old, though hardship had aged her eyes beyond her years. Grease stained her fingertips, evidence of her constant tinkering with discarded machinery she found around the airport's periphery. But her gaze, bright and unwavering, looked only at the troubled engine with the intensity of a surgeon examining a patient. Nervous laughter rippled through the hangar, breaking the tension like a stone thrown into still water. "Are you serious?" Colonel asked, his voice caught between amusement and exhaustion. "Sister, we've been working on this engine for 8 hours straight. This isn't some roadside generator you can fix with wire and prayers." Colonel's team, comprising some of Nigeria's most experienced aircraft technicians, shook their heads in disbelief. These men had trained in Germany, Britain, and the United States. They held certification from Boeing, Airbus, and Rolls-Royce. The idea that a street girl could solve what they couldn't seem beyond ridiculous. One of the younger engineers pointed toward the security guards. "A bag! How did she even get past the checkpoints? This is a restricted area. Remove her before she causes more trouble." Another called out, irritation clear in his voice. 2 security guards stepped forward, their hands moving to escort her out, but Chief Ogundimu raised his manicured hand in a gesture that immediately froze all movement. "Wait." His voice commanded absolute authority, honed through decades of boardroom battles and oil field negotiations. "In my business empire, I have witnessed many impossible things become possible. Let the young woman speak her mind." The hangar fell silent, except for the distant hum of generators and the faint smell of aviation fuel that permeated everything. Outside, seagulls cried over the runway where other aircraft taxied past, their engines creating a backdrop of controlled power. Amara took one careful step forward, her bare feet silent on the polished concrete floor. Despite her humble appearance, she moved with quiet confidence that seemed to command respect from the very air around her. "Sir," she said, her eyes never leaving the engine, "I heard your team discussing an unusual whistling noise during landing, followed by rough running and improper shutdown sequencing." Colonel's mouth dropped open in surprise. That description was exactly accurate, down to the technical terminology that most people outside aviation would never know. "How could you possibly know those details?" he muttered, genuine bewilderment replacing his earlier skepticism. Chief Ogundamu studied her face with the intensity he usually reserved for geological surveys and financial reports. The hangar seemed to hold its breath, suspended between disbelief and curiosity. Here stood Nigeria's most powerful businessman, surrounded by his most trusted technical experts, considering the words of a homeless young woman who had somehow penetrated multiple layers of security. "Give her the safety gloves," Chief Ogundamu commanded, his decision cutting through all objections. A ripple of shock moved through the assembled team like electricity. The security guard stepped back uncertainly, while several engineers exchanged glances of pure disbelief. Someone reluctantly handed Amara a pair of clean gray work gloves from the tool cart. Her hands trembled for just a moment as she pulled them on, not from fear, but from the overwhelming realization that someone was finally willing to listen. Then her hands steadied, and she approached the engine with the reverence of a pilgrim approaching a sacred shrine. What impossible knowledge does this homeless girl possess? Can she really solve what Nigeria's best engineers couldn't? Subscribe and hit that notification bell to discover the shocking truth behind Amara's mysterious expertise. Amara moved toward the engine with fluid grace, her earlier nervousness evaporating like morning mist under the Lagos sun. She walked around the massive turbine, her trained eyes scanning every surface, every connection, every component with the methodical precision of a master craftsman. The Rolls-Royce Pearl engine, worth more than most Nigerians would earn in several lifetimes, seemed to respond to her presence. She crouched beside the compressor section, running her gloved fingers lightly along the sensor harness, her touch as gentle as a mother checking her child's fever. "Do you even know what you're touching?" challenged Emeka, one of Cunnell's younger engineers, his voice sharp with professional pride wounded by the suggestion that his expertise was insufficient. Amara didn't respond to his question. Instead, she reached for a flashlight from the tool cart and a small inspection mirror, standard equipment that the team had been using all day. But in her hands, these simple tools seemed to transform into instruments of surgical precision. Her face drew close to an access panel near the compressor section, the beam of light revealing depths that others had examined but apparently not truly seen. The hangar fell into cathedral silence, broken only by the distant sounds of airport operations and the gentle hum of ventilation systems. "There," she said softly, her voice carrying the quiet authority of absolute certainty. "That mounting clamp is incorrectly positioned. It appears tight and secure, but it's seated in the wrong groove. This creates a microscopic air leak that produces a whistling sound under operational load." Cunnell moved closer, squinting at the area she indicated. His experienced eyes, aided by decades of troubleshooting, began to see what she was pointing out. The clamp looked perfectly normal at first glance, but her trained observation had identified a subtle misalignment. "And here," Amara continued, tracing a sensor wire with her finger, "this wire has developed a hairline crack in its insulation sheathing. It's making intermittent contact with the mounting bracket. When the engine heats up during operation, thermal expansion causes the wire to rub against the metal, sending incorrect signals to the engine management system." Chief Ogundamu stepped closer, his businessman's instincts recognizing expertise when he encountered it, regardless of its unlikely source. How could experienced engineers miss such problems? Because both issues mask each other's symptoms. Amara explained, her voice growing stronger with confidence. The air leak creates the whistling noise that initially seems like the primary problem. Meanwhile, the damaged sensor wire causes erratic engine behavior that appears to be a separate, unrelated issue. When you focus on fixing just one problem, the other continues to cause symptoms, making the repair seem unsuccessful. The explanation hit the engineering team like a revelation. Cunnell nodded slowly, his professional pride giving way to grudging respect. That would explain why every repair we attempted only partially resolved the symptoms. Each symptom led us down different diagnostic paths, added another engineer, understanding dawning in his voice. We never considered that two separate failures could be creating a combined effect. Chief Ogundamu's sharp eyes moved between Amara and his technical team. "Can you repair both problems?" Amara looked up at him, her dark eyes meeting his directly without flinching. Despite her humble circumstances, something in her gaze commanded respect, intelligence, competence, and unwavering determination. If you permit me, sir." His eyes held hers for a long moment, reading depths of knowledge and character that contradicted every assumption about her background and circumstances. In boardrooms across 3 continents, Chief Ogundimu had learned to recognize genuine expertise, regardless of its packaging. "Do it," he commanded simply. The atmosphere in the hangar transformed immediately. The engineering team shifted from skeptical observers to attentive students, watching every movement as Amara began her work. She approached the engine with systematic precision, her hands moving with the confidence of someone who understood not just the mechanics, but the very soul of the machine. First, she carefully loosened the mispositioned clamp, her movements deliberate and controlled. The tool in her hand seemed to become an extension of her will, as she repositioned the component into its correct mounting groove. The click, as it seated properly, was audible throughout the hangar, a sound of mechanical harmony restored. Next, she addressed the damaged sensor wire with equal precision. Using wire strippers and electrical tape from the tool cart, she carefully trimmed away the damaged insulation, rewrapped the exposed section with professional-grade protection, and secured it with a protective sleeve that would prevent future contact with the mounting bracket. Her work method impressed even the most skeptical observers. She cleaned each component after repair, double-checked every connection, and tested her work with the thoroughness of someone who understood that lives depended on aviation reliability. "Where'd you learn these techniques?" Colonel asked, his voice now filled with professional curiosity rather than doubt. Amara paused in her work, her hands still holding the inspection tools. "Nigerian Aerospace University," she replied quietly. "I graduated top of my class 3 years ago with specialization in turbine engine maintenance and repair." The revelation sent shockwaves through the hangar. Several engineers exchanged glances of recognition. They had heard of the brilliant student who had disappeared from the aerospace industry just as her career was beginning. "You're that Amara Chukwu," whispered one of the technicians. "The prodigy who vanished after graduation. We wonder what happened to you." Chief Ogundimu's expression softened with understanding and something approaching compassion. Success had taught him that brilliant minds could be destroyed by circumstances beyond their control, and that sometimes genius survived in the most unlikely places. Amara straightened, pulling off her work gloves with careful precision. Sweat beaded on her forehead from concentration and the humid Lagos heat, but her expression showed quiet satisfaction. "The repairs are complete," she announced simply. "The homeless girl has revealed her shocking credentials, but will her repairs actually work? What tragedy destroyed her promising career? Don't miss the next chapter where everything hangs in the balance. Subscribe now to see if genius can triumph over doubt." Silence gripped the hangar like a hell breath as Connell approached the repaired engine. His experienced hands traced the areas where Amara had worked, checking her repairs with the thoroughness of someone whose reputation depended on absolute precision. The clamp sat perfectly in its correct groove, and the sensor wire was protected and properly secured. "We need to test it," Connell announced, though his voice carried new respect. "If she's correct, we should see immediate improvement in all symptoms." Chief Ogundimu nodded once, his gold rings catching the industrial lighting as he gestured toward the hangar doors. "Roll out for testing." The engineering crew moved with renewed purpose, their earlier frustration replaced by anticipatory energy. The massive engine stand clicked and rolled across the polished concrete floor, its wheels echoing in the cavernous space. Outside, the afternoon sun blazed across the tarmac like molten copper, heat waves shimmering above the runway where other aircraft moved like distant mirages. A ground power cart was positioned and connected. Safety cables were attached with military precision. Orange traffic cones materialized around the test area, creating a perimeter of caution. The entire operation moved with the choreographed efficiency of a team that had performed this dance countless times, yet today carried special significance. Amara stood apart from the technical activity, her hands clasped behind her back, watching every preparation with the intensity of someone whose entire future hung on the next few minutes. The faded Ankara wrapper fluttered in the hot breeze, but her posture remained straight and confident. "Who are you, really?" Chief Ogundimu asked quietly, stepping beside her as his team completed their preparations. Amara's composure wavered for the first time since she had entered the hangar. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she blinked them away before they could fall. "If this test succeeds," she said softly, her voice barely audible above the ambient airport noise, "I will tell you everything." Chief Ogundamu studied her profile. The strong jawline, the intelligent eyes, the bearing that spoke of education and breeding despite her current circumstances. In his decades of business dealings, he had learned to read people like geological surveys, identifying hidden value beneath unpromising surfaces. Kunnel completed his final safety checks and looked toward his employer, all systems ready for engine start sequence. The warning beacon began their hypnotic rotation, casting red strobes across the white fuselage of the Bombardier Global 7500. Airport ground control had been notified, and other aircraft operations were temporarily redirected away from their test area. The entire section of tarmac seemed to hold its breath. Chief Ogundamu walked to the engine control cart, his expensive Ibata incongruous among the industrial equipment. He placed his manicured hand on the starter switch, but paused, turning back toward Amara. She stood motionless in the afternoon heat, the wind lifting strands of her hair like battle flags. In her eyes burned something fierce and unquenchable, the flame of expertise seeking validation, of dreams refusing to die despite impossible circumstances. "All personnel to safe positions," Kunnel called out, his voice carrying across the tarmac. Safety cones were checked one final time. Ground crew moved to designated areas. 2 mechanics positioned themselves at emergency stations. The beacons continued their warning rotation, painting everything in alternating shadows and crimson light. The moment stretched like a taut wire. Chief Ogundamu's thumb hovered over the starter button, while decades of business instinct warred with inexplicable faith in this unlikely young woman who had materialized from Lagos's streets with impossible knowledge. "Here we go," he announced and pressed a button. The engine awakened with a low whine that rose steadily in pitch and volume. Digital displays flickered to life, showing climbing numbers as the turbine accelerated through its startup sequence. The whine deepened into a throaty rush of controlled power, then evolved into the steady roar of a perfectly functioning jet engine. For 30 seconds, everything proceeded normally. Then a sharp alarm chirped, and a single red warning light began blinking on the control panel. Kunnel's head snapped toward the displays, his face paling as he read the warning indicators. The engine sound wavered slightly, fluctuating between smooth operation and subtle irregularity. Every face turned toward Amara, searching for explanation, for reassurance, for some sign that her confident diagnosis hadn't been misplaced optimism. She took one step forward, her expression calm despite the mounting tension. She raised her hand in a gesture that somehow commanded attention from every person present. "Don't shut it down," she called out, her voice cutting to the engine noise and rising panic. "Not yet. Listen carefully to what it's telling you." "Are you crazy?" Kunnel shouted back, his hand moving toward the emergency shutdown controls. "A warning light means immediate danger. We could destroy the entire engine core if there's internal damage." "It's not internal damage," Amara interrupted firmly, her voice carrying absolute certainty. "It's the sensor system recalibrating itself. I rewired the damaged circuit, and the engine management computer needs time to accept the corrected sensor readings." Her words carried a calmness that penetrated the rising chaos. Chief Ogundamu, who had survived oil field explosions and border betrayals, recognized the voice of someone speaking with complete professional authority. "Hold steady," he commanded, his voice silencing all doubt and hesitation. "Give it time." The seconds crawled by like hours. The engine's whine grew progressively smoother. The red warning light flickered once, twice, then turned solid green. The wavering sound transformed into the steady, powerful roar of perfect mechanical harmony. Gasps of amazement rippled through the assembled crowd. The engine note was cleaner and more powerful than it had been in months, running with the precision of a Swiss chronometer. Chief Ogundamu stared at the green lights and perfect operational readings, then slowly turned toward Amara. For 6 hours, Nigeria's best aerospace engineers had battled this machine unsuccessfully. In less than 20 minutes, this homeless young woman had accomplished what they could not. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, but somehow audible above the engine's roar. Amara swallowed hard, tears finally breaking free to stream down her cheeks. She stood straighter, her voice clear and strong despite her emotion. "My name is Amara Chukwu. The engine roars to life, but who is this mysterious genius really? What tragedy transformed a top engineering student into a homeless street girl? The most shocking revelation is coming. Hit that subscribe button, because her story will leave you speechless." The name meant nothing to most of the engineers, but Cunnell's weathered face went pale as if struck by lightning. Recognition dawned in his eyes like sunrise breaking over Lagos harbor. "Chukwu," he breathed, the name carrying weight and memory. From Nigerian Aerospace University. Top graduate. The brilliant student who disappeared without explanation. Murmurs rippled through the assembled crowd as pieces of a puzzle began falling into place. They had all heard whispers of the prodigy who had dominated every aerospace engineering course, the young woman destined for greatness in Nigeria's growing aviation industry. Chief Ogundemu's sharp gaze never left Amara's face. "Explain," he said simply, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to getting complete truth. Standing in the shadow of the perfectly functioning engine she had just repaired, Amara's voice cracked as she began to speak. The roar of the jet turbine provided a backdrop of mechanical perfection that contrasted sharply with the human tragedy she was about to reveal. 3 years ago, my father was Professor Jonathan Chukwu, head of mechanical engineering at University of Lagos. My mother, Dr. Grace Chukwu, was a respected physician at Lagos University Teaching Hospital. We lived in Ikoyi, in a house filled with books and dreams and plans for my future in aerospace engineering. Her voice grew stronger as she continued, drawing strength from finally being able to tell her story to people who might understand its significance. I was 20 years old, having just graduated with the highest honors in aerospace engineering that the university had ever recorded. International companies were competing to recruit me. Rolls-Royce had offered me a position in their London facility. Boeing wanted me for their African operations expansion team. Chief Ogundemu listened with the intensity he usually reserved for geological reports that could make or break oil exploration investments. Around them, the engineering team had grown silent, recognizing they were witnessing something profound. Then one morning, everything changed. Amara continued, her voice becoming smaller but somehow more powerful. My father announced that he was taking a second wife, following traditional customs that my mother had always believed they had moved beyond. My mother, who had sacrificed her own research career to support his academic advancement, who had invested everything in their partnership, couldn't bear the betrayal. The tropical heat seemed to intensify around them, but nobody moved. Even the background noise of airport operations seemed to fade as Amara's story unfolded. She prepared his favorite meal that morning. Pepper soup with goat meat, the same dish she had cooked for him when they were poor students together. But she had added something else to the pot, rat poison. And when he collapsed at the breakfast table, choking and convulsing, she sat down and ate from the same bowl. Gasps echoed across the tarmac. Several of the engineers stepped back involuntarily, shock written across their faces. "They died in front of me," Amara whispered, tears flowing freely now. "My father first, then my mother 20 minutes later. They held hands as the poison took them, and my mother's last words were, 'We will not be separated by his betrayal.'" Chief Ogundemu's expression had softened into something approaching paternal concern. In his 70 years, he had witnessed many tragedies, but the raw pain in this young woman's voice touched something deep in his businessman's heart. "I was their only child," Amar continued. "The house, the cars, everything was seized by distant relatives who emerged from nowhere with legal claims. The job offers evaporated when news of the murder-suicide scandal spread through academic circles. No company wanted to associate with the daughter of such a public tragedy." Cunnell shook his head slowly, understanding beginning to dawn. "You lost everything." "Worse than that," Amara replied. "I lost myself. I couldn't face the interviews, couldn't bear the sympathetic looks, couldn't handle the whispered conversations that followed me everywhere. I canceled every appointment, threw away my phone, and walked out of my life." She gestured toward the repaired engine, its perfect operation a testament to knowledge that had never left her despite years of hardship. "For 3 years, I've been living on Lagos streets. sleeping in motor parks, begging for food scraps. But every single day, I walked past this maintenance facility. I would stand at the fence, watching engineers work on aircraft, remembering the future I had lost. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, but everyone remained focused on her words, understanding that they were witnessing something extraordinary. Not just mechanical genius, but human resilience that defied comprehension. Today, when I heard the frustration in your voices, when I saw how the problem was defeating your best efforts, I thought, just once, let me try. Even if I'm thrown out, even if people laugh at me, at least I won't have died with my knowledge locked inside me forever. Chief Ogundamu stepped closer, his expensive leather shoes clicking against the tarmac. He placed a gentle hand on Amara's shoulder, the gesture carrying more weight than any business contract he had ever signed. "You didn't just fix my engine," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "You reminded me why second chances matter. You showed all of us that brilliance can survive anywhere, waiting for the right moment to shine." Cunnell's voice cracked as he spoke. "We almost missed it. We almost threw you out without listening. But you didn't," Amara replied, looking around at the faces that had transformed from skepticism to respect to something approaching awe. Someone was willing to listen. Someone said, "Let her try." Chief Ogundamu turned to address the entire assembly, his voice carrying the authority that had built oil empires and commanded international respect. "Remember this moment," he declared. "Remember that greatness doesn't announce itself with credentials or expensive clothes. It whispers from unexpected places, asking only for permission to serve." He turned back to Amara, his decision already made. "Amara Chukwu, from this moment forward, you will never sleep on streets again. You will never beg for food again. I will personally ensure that the world recognizes a genius it almost lost. From the ashes of unimaginable tragedy, a brilliant mind has risen again. But what life-changing offer is the billionaire about to make? Don't miss the incredible finale. Subscribe now to see how this homeless girl's story transforms into something beyond imagination. The private jet's cabin gleamed like a floating palace above the clouds. Cream leather seats curved around polished mahogany tables, while gold-toned lighting created an atmosphere of refined luxury. Amara sat rigidly near the window, her faded Ankara wrapper looking impossibly out of place among the opulent surroundings. She stared out at the cloud formations over the Atlantic Ocean, still struggling to believe that her life had transformed so dramatically in a single afternoon. The same engine she had repaired now carried her toward London at 40,000 feet, its perfect operation a testament to knowledge that had survived 3 years of urban survival. Across from her, Chief Ogundamu leaned back with the comfortable ease of someone who had spent decades commanding private aircraft across 3 continents. But his eyes never left Amara. Studying her with the same intensity he brought to oil field geological surveys. "Tell me about your training," he said finally, his voice steady above the gentle hum of pressurized flight. "How does someone learn to diagnose engine problems that defeat experienced professionals?" Amara shifted uncomfortably in the luxury seat. "Nigerian Aerospace University has one of the most demanding programs in Africa, sir. We studied not just textbook mechanics, but engine psychology, learning to listen to what machines are trying to communicate." Chief Ogundamu raised his eyebrows. "Engine psychology? Engines are like living creatures," Amara explained, her voice growing stronger as she discussed her passion. "They develop personalities, habits, preferences. A good technician doesn't just fix problems. They understand a machine's history, its stress patterns, its unique characteristics. And yet here you are, wearing torn clothes and speaking of years spent begging." His tone carried no judgment, only genuine curiosity about the journey that had brought her to this moment. Amara's face burned with shame. She looked down at her hands, still bearing traces of grease despite multiple washings. "After my parents died, I lost the ability to function in normal society. Every interview, every professional interaction reminded me of what I had lost. It became easier to disappear than to face a world that knew my story." Chief Ogundamu reached into the cabin storage compartment and withdrew a small velvet jewelry box. He placed it on the mahogany table between them, its presence somehow commanding attention despite its modest size. "Open it," he said simply. Amara hesitated, then lifted the lid with trembling fingers. Inside lay a gold bracelet, elegantly simple yet radiating understated wealth. Intricate engravings covered its surface, symbols that spoke of African heritage combined with international sophistication. "Sir, I cannot accept." Chief Ogundamu raised his hand, silencing her protest. "This bracelet belonged to my late wife, Folake. She died 5 years ago from cancer, but she spent her life believing in people others had written off. She used to say that every person carries hidden greatness, waiting for someone to recognize it." Tears welled in Amara's eyes as she touched the bracelet with reverent fingers. The gold felt warm, as if it carried the essence of the woman who had worn it. "I am giving this to you," Chief Ogundamu continued, "because I believe you are not meant to waste your brilliance on survival. You are meant to lead, to innovate, to show Africa what indigenous genius can accomplish." The weight of his words pressed against Amara's chest like a physical force. "What are you saying, sir?" Chief Ogundamu leaned forward, his business instincts fully engaged. "Tomorrow morning, we meet with the board of directors for African Aerospace Industries, the continent's largest aircraft maintenance consortium. They've been searching for someone to head their new Nigerian operations, someone with both technical brilliance and deep understanding of local conditions." Amara's heart stopped. African Aerospace Industries was legendary in engineering circles, handling maintenance contracts for airlines across 12 African nations. Leading their Nigerian division would place her among the most influential technical professionals on the continent. "Sir, they will never accept someone with my background. 3 years as a homeless person, no current references, no professional network. They will accept a woman who solved a problem that stumped their best engineers." Chief Ogundamu interrupted firmly. "Your reputation starts today with what you accomplished in my hangar." The aircraft's cabin attendant appeared, offering refreshments and informing them that dinner was prepared. Chief Ogundamu gestured toward the private cabin at the rear of the aircraft. "There are clothes in your size back there," he said. "Tomorrow morning, you walk into that boardroom not as someone seeking charity, but as a solution to their problems." Amara excused herself and entered the luxurious private cabin. A selection of professional attire awaited her: elegant suits, refined dresses, and accessories that transformed her from street survivor into business executive. When she emerged 30 minutes later, the change was so dramatic that Chief Ogundamu rose from his seat in surprise. Her hair, now properly styled, framed features that spoke of intelligence and determination. The navy blue business suit emphasized her natural dignity, while the gold bracelet caught the cabin lighting like captured starlight. She moved with new confidence, as if remembering who she had always been beneath the layers of survival and tragedy. "You look like destiny itself," Chief Ogundamu said quietly. Over dinner, they discussed technical innovations, industry trends, and Amara's vision for advancing African aerospace capabilities. Her passion blazed like a rekindled flame as she outlined plans for training local technicians, developing indigenous maintenance capabilities, and establishing Nigeria as a regional center for aviation excellence. "When we land tomorrow," Chief Ogundamu said as the meal concluded, "you will face a choice. You can return to the streets and disappear again, or you can step into the life you were always meant to live." Amara gripped the gold bracelet, feeling its weight like an anchor to possibility. "I choose to step forward," she said firmly. "I will not waste a second chance." The aircraft soared through the night sky, carrying them toward a future that seemed impossible just hours earlier. Below, the lights of cities sparkled like terrestrial constellations, each one representing dreams and struggles and the eternal human capacity for transformation. 6 months later, Amara stood before the assembled board of African Aerospace Industries, presenting quarterly results that exceeded every projection. Under her leadership, the Nigerian division had become the consortium's most profitable operation, attracting contracts from airlines across West Africa. Chief Ogundamu sat in the back of the boardroom, watching with paternal pride as a young woman he had discovered commanded respect from industry leaders across the continent. She wore the gold bracelet every day, a reminder of the moment when possibility had rescued her from despair. After the presentation, Amara approached him with a smile that illuminated the entire room. "Thank you," she said simply, "for seeing what others missed." for giving genius a second chance. Chief Ogundama nodded, his eyes bright with satisfaction. You were always brilliant, Amara. You just needed someone to say, if you permit, I will listen. And as Legos sprawled beneath them through the boardroom windows, both of them understood that sometimes the most profound transformations begin with the simplest words. If you permit, I will fix it. From homeless to heading Africa's largest aerospace operation, Amara's incredible journey proves that brilliance can emerge in the darkest circumstances. What's your biggest takeaway from this amazing transformation? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories that will change how you see the world around you.